Knock, knock. Howdy, folks. Dr. Ben here. Welcome to the Dr. Ben and Friends podcast, where we're putting the med in comedy. Today, we're celebrating healthcare heroes who help make our lives healthier and funnier. My guests are child and adolescent psychiatric medicine physician, Dr. Brian, and the legendary
internet guy,
legendary mental health champion, Dr. John Delony.
Yeah, there we go.
And you, listener, Dr. John, are you ready to play What the Heck?
Let's do it.
All right. You know a lot of words, and these medical terms related somehow to psychology, mental health, can be tricky. Not common vocabulary words. We're going to test your knowledge. You're going to pronounce them and tell us what you think they mean. And we'll see how close you are. So, listener, are you ready to play along? All right, Dr. Brian has the first word here. Dr. Brian, let's show Dr. John. What is
formication?
Formication, Dr. John.
That is when two insurance forms from different clipboards get together after hours. Yeah, that's right. They get together after hours.
And they formication.
And the other papers in the clipboards don't know about it. Formication.
I like it.
That is a less of a. It's a less than a phobia, but it's some sort of fear about filling out paperwork.
I like it. Yeah,
totally made
I
that
think
up.
we all have that.
I'm trying to say that confidently.
We
What
don't
is
like to fill out forms. We don't like paperwork. Is he close?
That's not even close.
I was buying it. Dr. John. What is formication, Dr. Brian?
So formication is a feeling of like bugs crawling on you.
Okay. Nice.
And when might someone have that? Is that something we need to be concerned about? Sometimes I feel like
this.
Yes, there is.
Substances.
K2 spice. Yeah.
Substances cause
most
that?
of the stimulants in high doses will cause this. Yeah, you'll see it with some psychosis.
I feel like sometimes the bugs crawling on me, but I don't know. Now,
That's because you don't shower regularly.
that could be.
If there's actually a bug, it's not a delusion.
Right.
If you're on the West Coast and you feel like a bug's crawling on you, would that be califormication?
Yes, exactly.
All right, Red Hot Chili Peppers.
All right, the next one.
Number 2. You ready, Dr. John?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, what is this?
Ooh, dude, bringing up the German. Witzel sucked.
Okay.
That is, I know exactly what that is. That is it's like an off-menu chili dog that you get at Wiener Schnitzel, but you have to, it, and then the high school kid at the register looks up and they give you finger guns and they're like, got you, and they go make that
some
for
insider.
You
it's not
may
on the
actually
menu.
have this. This one's one you should pay attention to.
Oh, so it's not, doesn't have to do with a menu item?
I used to be able to rattle off all these old German words. What is it?
So Weichel stuckt.
Yeah. Or Witzel sucked.
It is when you make inappropriate jokes.
Yes. That's not me at all.
All right. Inappropriate jokes.
Yeah.
I think my wife
joking.
has diagnosed me with that.
Compulsive laughing at inappropriate times. So that is actual. Could be from frontal lobe injury.
Okay, pronounce that to me. I
damage.
forgot the W and the V. Good grief.
Witzel shoot.
You say Weichel stuckt.
Duked.
Witzel shoot. All right.
I like Witzel sucked, but okay.
Listener, any of you suffering from that? Inappropriate jokes, compulsive laughing at
I
inappropriate
100% have that.
times.
I think maybe some of us
might be from brain damage. All right. Frontal lobe injury. All right. Are we ready for number 3? Word number 3. Dr. John.
Pseudobulbar.
Oh, I think he did good with the pronunciation. What is pseudobulbar? Any part of that word look familiar?
Oh yeah, of course. Pseudo's familiar. I'm trying to. I don't know. It's a term I know it's from the cattle industry, and it is when you're working with female cows, or you're working with bulls. You can't set the bar too high or with the female cows, because the bulls they like their cows a little bit from the other side of the field, right? And so you have to set a
Bulbar.
pseudobulbar.
A pseudobulbar.
Yeah, it's not really a high bar.
Like
they look a little bit kind of scraggly cows, but they're actually kind of fancy.
Like a decoy, or
Yeah, that's close enough. Yeah.
Yeah.
set a low bulbar.
Yeah. So
Does that have anything to do with
pseudobulbar
cows?
is inappropriate laughter.
Oh, so that's the
Again,
inappropriate
don't
laughter.
have
Laughing
that
at
either.
that joke would have been inappropriate.
Inappropriate laughter.
Yeah, that's close though. The bulbar.
Excellent.
All right.
Ready?
Okay, go
I don't
for it.
have that at my show. I don't have regular laughter. I don't have inappropriate laughter.
I want some laughter.
Some laughter. I don't care if it's appropriate or not. Just some. All right, ready for the next word. Oh, Dr. John, what is this?
Can you just read it? If you can read it.
Read it.
Hippopotomonstrosesquipedaliophobia.
Is this a real word?
For sure it is.
Okay, for sure it is. We might be trying to stump you with a fake word.
Nope.
Okay.
This is I don't I'm trying to be disparaging.
Okay.
Okay. But
Be sensitive here.
yeah, I'm trying to say this in a way that's not triggering or threatening in any way. But occasionally out in the savannah,
Okay.
again, way after hours,
After.
a lion will have their way with a young, beautiful hippopotamus female. And they also, again, I don't want to be weird, but, and this is where genetics comes in and crossbreeding, but occasionally a rose will get involved, right?
Okay.
It'll get involved. And it creates a really unique animal / plant on the back end.
Okay.
And
With a hippopotamus and a lion
and a rose.
and a rose. Okay.
Yeah.
Hence the rose and the hippo. I see
That's
that.
right. And so, and there's a unique phobia that emerges from this creature. It's pretty an exotic creature. It's rare. You probably have never seen it. But certain tribes, they're, it's usually 1 out of 10. You probably know the data better than I do.
1 out of
but it's
12.
1 out of 12.
Yeah.
But will suffer from just a
fear of
significant
this.
fear of this creation of the lion that was mated with the hippo and a rose got involved.
That sounds scary. That
Nailed
does
it.
sound scary.
Nailed it.
Yeah, that's almost exactly. It's
I see that.
fear of long words.
Yeah.
Fear of long words. Very close.
Very close.
But orthopedic surgeons have a fear of long words. We have very limited vocabulary. Like
Cut.
bone broke.
Cut.
Need fix.
So.
All right.
All right, here we go.
All right. Ready for the next one, Dr. John. What is this? What the heck?
Oh, it's lycanthropy. God, why did I lose that word? Come on, Brian.
This is from Harry Potter.
Ah, okay. Harry Potter fans, you might know this. Okay. It's a psych word.
What is it?
So this is a delusion that you're transforming into an animal.
Oh, ever have that delusion, Dr.
I
John?
had one this morning.
What were you transforming
My
into?
wife said I was transforming into a donkey.
Did she call you a
Is that-
donkey?
Nope. She
Okay.
used the biblical term. That also, it's got a comorbidity, which is also a human body part. Yes. Yeah.
A donkey. All right. And then, so people actually have this delusion they're turning into an animal.
Oh yeah,
that's different
delusions
than
are
like
pretty
the
wild,
furries,
like,
Delusions
right?
are awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah.
anything.
Lycanthropy. All right. That's different than people that dress up like animals, right?
Can be.
They're on the delusion spectrum, I guess.
It's kind of. Maybe there's some more interrelated there.
This,
Way to go, Ben.
there was a patient that went to a psychologist and said, Doctor, I think I'm turning into a dog. And the psychiatrist said, all right, well, get up here on the couch and let me talk to you. And he's like, I would, but I'm not allowed on the furniture.
Nice. See, yes.
So he might suffer from lycanthropy. Think he's turning into an animal. All right. What animal would you want to become if you could turn into an
That's
animal?
a great answer. What do you think, Brian?
This one.
Yeah.
The hippo monstro rose.
Yeah, that's pretty rare.
It's,
All right.
It's an every 500-year thing. But,
Yeah. I've never seen one.
what animal would you want to become?
I think it'd be cool to fly. Something that flies.
Well done. Yeah, a raptor bird. That's what I'd want to be.
Yeah, that doesn't have predators.
Like the fastest birds in the world. And I mean, animals, and they just zoom around and they
Yeah.
can see. Yeah, that'd be cool. I like that.
Get fish on a
Yeah.
What do you think?
Just an eagle and just
eagle.
Yeah,
And you're
but-
protected in the U.S.
yeah. But I'd do something wild like fly up and down Broadway. Like there's no reason to hang out in the forest. Like
That's right.
That would be awesome.
That would be cool. All right. Any more words for Dr. John, Dr. Brian?
got last one.
Last one.
Oh, what is this? Is that a real word? Maybe we're making this up. Dr. John, what is this? How do you say that word?
Psychoria.
Okay.
I'm going to take an educated guess at this one. Okay. And I'm basing this off of a friend of mine who's a speech pathologist that diagnosed me at the dinner table one night with logorrhea. And I said, what's that diagnosis? And she said, it's just somebody that incessantly talks without stopping. And so it just is always coming out. And the table universally agreed. You have that.
Unanimously.
And so I'm wondering if this is a almost in the rumination category.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. Flight of ideas.
There you go.
Right there.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Explain to the listener, Dr. Brian, what is flight of ideas? Is that like
Yeah. Flight of ideas.
when you're
basically
traveling by
where you're-
plane or?
Yes, exactly.
When you're thinking on an airplane.
Yes. When you're thinking in first class, has to be first class.
Okay.
Yeah. Flight of ideas is where you're jumping from idea to idea to idea, and you can't even connect them. You're just moving so fast.
In your world, is that usually substance derived too?
Can be usually like bipolar is where I would see it. Like
Okay.
Bipolar would have flight of ideas.
In a manic state. Yeah.
Mhm.
Manic.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
you can,
it never occurred to me that I think diarrhea is one of the funniest things in the world. Like when your body's like, I need this out now.
Right.
Like, I don't care where we are. This is leaving our body. The idea of that makes me laugh every time. And experiencing it, not so funny, but the idea of it's funny. But it never occurred to me that there
Other
was
things can
a
have rhea.
prefix and a suffix to it. Yeah, then one of those means projectile. And whether it's words or thoughts or cha-cha-cha. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, break it down. It's psychoria.
I think there's like rhinorrhea. Your nose is bleeding. So there's a lot of rheas. Gonorrhea.
There's a gonorrhea when you're leaving a lot of rooms really fast.
Right. You might
Yeah, I was like, is that a suffix?
Well, I got 0. So
All right.
that's the
You
difference
had me
between
convinced, though.
an internet guy and a practicing psychiatrist.
Oh, well, I had to look all those up too.
We went deep into the archives for those.